December 6, 1941, Washington, District of Columbia. The marble corridors of the Capitol building echo with the measured footsteps of congressmen debating America's role in a world at war. In Detroit, the assembly lines at River Rouge plant hum with the production of civilian automobiles, sleek sedans destined for showrooms across the nation. In the shipyards of Brooklyn, a handful of merchant vessels take shape, their construction leisurely, their purpose purely commercial. Across the Pacific, the setting sun casts long shadows over Pearl Harbor, where the United States Pacific Fleet lies at anchor, its massive battleships resting in perfect rows like sleeping giants. America is at peace, but in less than 24 hours, everything will change. The morning of December 7, 1941, arrives with deceptive tranquility. At 7:55 a.m. Hawaiian time, the first wave of 183 Japanese aircraft screams out of the clouds above Oahu. Within minutes, the harbor transforms into an inferno. The USS Arizona erupts in a cataclysmic explosion, taking 1,177 men to their deaths in a matter of seconds. Torpedoes rip through the hull of the USS Oklahoma, which capsizes, trapping 400 men inside her steel tomb. Black smoke billows thousands of feet into the tropical sky as oil slicks catch fire, turning the water itself into flame. By the time the second wave departs at 9:45 a.m., 2,400 Americans are dead. The Pacific Fleet is crippled. 8 battleships are sunk or damaged. Nearly 200 aircraft destroyed. In a single morning, the Japanese Empire has achieved what seemed impossible. They have struck at the heart of American naval power and delivered a blow that would take years to recover from. Or so it seems. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt addresses a joint session of Congress on December 8, his voice steady despite the weight of catastrophe. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. Within hours, America is at war. But the nation faces a terrifying reality. It is utterly unprepared. In December of 1941, the United States Army ranks 18th in the world, smaller than Romania's. The entire American tank force consists of fewer than 400 obsolete machines, many of them relics from the First World War. The Army Air Forces operate approximately 1,200 combat-ready aircraft. Japan and Germany each possess thousands. American factories are producing civilian goods at a pace that seems robust, but virtually nothing for modern warfare. The Axis powers control most of Europe, North Africa, and vast swaths of Asia. Germany's Wehrmacht has conquered France in 6 weeks, rolled through Poland in 18 days, and stands at the gates of Moscow. Japan's military machine dominates the Pacific, seizing territory with lightning speed. The Philippines fall, Guam falls, Wake Island falls, Singapore, the supposedly impregnable British fortress, surrenders in February of 1942, yielding 80,000 troops to Japanese captivity. In the Atlantic, German U-boats operate with near impunity, sending hundreds of thousands of tons of Allied shipping to the ocean floor each month. In the first 6 months of 1942 alone, German submarines sink more than 500 ships off the American East Coast, in what U-boat commanders will later call their second happy time. Oil tankers burn within sight of Miami Beach. Wreckage washes ashore on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The situation is desperate. The free world is losing, and everyone knows it. But something extraordinary is about to happen. Something that will alter the course of human history and redefine what is possible when a nation commits itself entirely to a single purpose. In January of 1942, President Roosevelt delivers his State of the Union address. What he announces seems like fantasy, like the fevered dream of a man who has lost touch with reality. He declares that American industry will produce 60,000 aircraft in 1942, and 125,000 in 1943. He calls for 120,000 tanks, 55,000 anti-aircraft guns, and 18 million tons of merchant shipping. The announcement is met with skepticism. The head of the War Production Board, William Knudsen, formerly of General Motors, privately doubts whether such numbers are achievable. Critics call it propaganda, designed to boost morale rather than reflect genuine capability. Industry leaders worry that Roosevelt doesn't understand the complexity of modern manufacturing, the shortage of machine tools, the lack of skilled workers. They are all wrong. What follows is the most rapid and complete industrial transformation in human history, a metamorphosis so profound that it will not only turn the tide of the war, but establish the United States as the world's dominant superpower for generations to come. The conversion begins immediately. On December 22, 1941, just 15 days after Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt signs an executive order that effectively nationalizes industrial production. The War Production Board receives sweeping authority to dictate what American factories will make, when they will make it, and in what quantities. Automobile production ceases entirely in February of 1942. The last civilian car rolls off the assembly line on February 10th. Not a single passenger vehicle will be manufactured for the duration of the war. Instead, those factories, with their vast assembly lines, their engineering expertise, their armies of skilled workers, turn to weapons. General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler become the arsenal of democracy. The Willow Run plant near Detroit, built by Ford specifically for war production, stretches over 3.5 million square feet, 67 acres under one roof. At peak production, this single factory produces one B-24 Liberator heavy bomber every 63 minutes. Workers enter with raw aluminum and steel at one end. A 4-engine strategic bomber capable of carrying 8,000 pounds of ordnance over 2,000 miles flies out the other end. The scale defies comprehension. By 1944, Willow Run alone employs 42,000 workers operating around the clock in 3 shifts. The assembly line moves at a carefully calibrated pace, each station adding components with precision choreography. Wings, fuselages, engines, gun turrets, instrument panels, all converge in a mechanical ballet of staggering complexity. But aircraft are only the beginning. In the shipyards, an even more remarkable transformation unfolds. Henry J. Kaiser, a construction magnate with no prior shipbuilding experience, revolutionizes an industry that has existed for millennia. Traditional shipyards build vessels slowly, carefully, using skilled craftsmen who bend and rivet steel plates one at a time over many months. Kaiser throws out the rulebook. He applies assembly line techniques to ship construction, prefabricating entire sections in specialized facilities before bringing them to the ways for final assembly. His approach is considered heresy by naval architects. It cannot possibly work, they insist. Ships are too complex, too individual. But Kaiser doesn't care about tradition. He cares about production. On September 27, 1942, the SS Robert E. Peary is launched from Kaiser's Richmond Shipyard No. 2 in California. From the moment her keel is laid to the moment she hits the water, 4 days, 15.5 hours. It is a record that stuns the world and terrifies the enemy. A Liberty ship, 10,467 gross tons, 441 feet long, capable of carrying 9,000 tons of cargo, built in less than 5 days. The implications are profound. Germany's U-boat fleet is sinking Allied shipping at unsustainable rates, but Kaiser and his competitors are now producing ships faster than the Germans can destroy them. In 1941, before Pearl Harbor, American shipyards launch 1 million tons of merchant shipping. In 1942, that number explodes to 8 million tons. By 1943, it reaches 19 million tons. Each Liberty ship requires 250,000 separate parts. Each one costs $1.5 million, and America is churning them out at a rate of 3 per day at peak production. In total, American shipyards will deliver 2,700 Liberty ships, 531 Victory ships, and 2,700 tankers before war's end. But these are just the cargo vessels. The naval construction program proceeds in parallel, on an even grander scale. Aircraft carriers, the new capital ships of naval warfare, take years to build using traditional methods. The USS Lexington, laid down in 1921, required 5 years to complete. But by 1943, American yards are launching Essex-class fleet carriers in 18 months. The Casablanca-class escort carriers, smaller vessels designed to provide air cover for convoys, roll out even faster. Kaiser's Vancouver shipyard produces 50 of them, averaging one every 4.5 months. At the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, the battleship USS New Jersey is completed in just 29 months, half the time required for comparable vessels built a generation earlier. Her sister ships follow in rapid succession. Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin. Each displaces 45,000 tons. Each carries 9 16-inch guns capable of hurling 2,700-pound shells 23 miles. Each represents the pinnacle of naval engineering, and America is building them as if they were automobiles. The numbers begin to tell a story that statistics alone cannot fully capture. A story of a nation that has found a purpose and pursues it with relentless, almost inhuman efficiency. In 1942, American factories produced 47,836 aircraft. Roosevelt's impossible goal of 60,000 falls short, but not by much, especially considering that most experts believed 30,000 was optimistic. The following year, production explodes to 85,898 aircraft. In 1944, it peaks at 96,318. The variety is as impressive as the volume. The B-17 Flying Fortress, bristling with 13 50-caliber machine guns and capable of carrying 17,600 pounds of bombs. The B-29 Super Fortress, a technological marvel with pressurized crew compartments, remote-controlled gun turrets, and a range of 1,250 miles. The P-51 Mustang, perhaps the finest fighter aircraft of the war, with a top speed of 440 miles per hour and the range to escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back. Each type requires thousands of components manufactured to precise specifications. The R-2800 Cyclone engine powering the B-17 contains 4,700 individual parts. The Norden bomb sight, so secret that bombardiers are trained to destroy it rather than let it fall into enemy hands, incorporates 2,000 precision-machined components, and these are being produced not in dozens or hundreds, but in thousands. Tank production follows a similar trajectory. In 1940, America manufactures 331 tanks, barely enough to equip a single armored division. By 1942, that number reaches 24,997. At peak production in 1943, American factories delivered 29,508 tanks. The M4 Sherman, the standard medium tank, weighs 33 tons, mounts a 75mm gun, carries a crew of 5, and can achieve a top speed of 30 miles per hour on roads. But the Sherman is not just a weapon. It is a product of American industrial philosophy. It is designed for mass production, with components that can be manufactured by companies with no previous experience building armored vehicles. The automotive industry's expertise with engines, transmissions, and suspensions translates directly to tank construction. The result is a vehicle that may not match the German Tiger tank in individual combat, but emerges from American factories at a rate of 2,000 per month at peak production. The Germans build 1,347 Tiger tanks during the entire war. America produces 49,234 Shermans. This industrial miracle requires more than factories and machines. It requires people, millions of them, working with a dedication and intensity that transforms the American home front into a vast military camp. On December 6, 1941, the United States has a workforce of approximately 60 million. By the war's end, that number grows to 66 million, despite sending 12 million men into military service. The difference is made up by those who were previously excluded from the industrial economy: women, African Americans, older workers, the disabled. In 1940, only 27% of women work outside the home. By 1944, that number reaches 37%, nearly 19 million women in the workforce. 6 million of them are performing jobs previously considered exclusively male territory: welding, riveting, operating lathes and drill presses, assembling aircraft engines, driving trucks, unloading cargo ships. They are immortalized as Rosie the Riveter, but they are so much more. They are crane operators lifting 20-ton gun turrets into place. They are welders working in the double bottom of Liberty ships, their torches creating patterns of sparks in confined spaces that would terrify anyone with claustrophobia. They are aircraft inspectors whose careful eyes catch defects that could doom a bomber crew over Germany. At Kaiser's Richmond Shipyard No. 2, a worker named Wendy the Welder sets a record by driving 3,442 rivets in a single 6-hour shift. At the Long Beach plant of Douglas Aircraft, women comprise 42% of the workforce, building C-47 transport planes that will drop paratroopers over Normandy. The African-American migration from the rural South to the industrial North accelerates dramatically. In 1940, approximately 10% of the black population lives outside the South. By 1945, that number doubles. They come seeking work in the war plants, fleeing the limitations of Jim Crow segregation, hoping to find opportunity in the factories that are desperate for labor. They face discrimination, certainly. Many unions refuse them membership. Housing is often segregated. Racial tensions occasionally explode into violence, as in the Detroit riot of June 1943, which leaves 34 dead. But they work. They rivet and weld and assemble. At the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama, African-American mechanics service the fighters flown by the nation's first black military pilots. In the shipyards, black workers comprise significant portions of the labor force, their contributions essential despite the prejudice they face. The workers labor in conditions that modern safety regulations would never permit. Shifts run 10, 12, sometimes 16 hours. Factories operate around the clock, 7 days a week. Industrial accidents are common. In the shipyards, workers die from falls, from being crushed by heavy equipment, from asphyxiation in confined spaces. But production cannot stop. The soldiers fighting overseas need weapons, need ammunition, need food, need equipment. Every hour of production matters. Every shell, every bullet, every bandage could save a life. The industrial surge is not merely about quantity. It is about innovation, about solving problems that have never been encountered before, about pushing the boundaries of what technology can achieve. The Manhattan Project represents the extreme edge of this innovation. In August of 1942, the United States commits to building an atomic bomb. The challenge is almost incomprehensible. Nuclear physics remains largely theoretical. Nobody has ever produced more than microscopic quantities of fissionable material. The entire field of atomic science has existed for less than 4 decades. Yet within 3 years, America constructs vast facilities at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Hanford, Washington, each consuming more electricity than entire American cities. The Y-12 electromagnetic separation plant at Oak Ridge covers 500 acres and employs 22,000 workers, most of whom have no idea what they are building. The K-25 gaseous diffusion plant stretches over 2 million square feet under one roof, the largest building in the world at the time. At the height of construction, 75,000 workers labor on the Manhattan Project sites. They are building facilities based on theories that haven't been fully proven, using technologies that are being invented as construction proceeds. The stakes are absolute. Germany might be pursuing similar research. If Hitler acquires atomic weapons first, the war is lost. But innovation extends far beyond nuclear physics. Radar technology, primitive and experimental in 1941, becomes sophisticated and ubiquitous. The cavity magnetron, developed by British scientists and manufactured in American factories, produces microwave frequencies that allow radar to detect aircraft and ships with unprecedented accuracy. By 1944, American factories are producing more than 70,000 radar sets per year. The proximity fuse, a radio frequency detonator that explodes anti-aircraft shells near their targets without requiring direct hits, increases the effectiveness of anti-aircraft fire by a factor of 5. Penicillin, discovered in 1928 but difficult to produce in quantity, becomes available in massive quantities through American pharmaceutical industry innovation. By D-Day, there is enough penicillin to treat every Allied casualty who needs it. The synthetic rubber program solves a crisis that threatens to cripple the war effort. Japan's conquest of Southeast Asia cuts off 90% of America's natural rubber supply. Tires, gaskets, hoses, insulation, all require rubber. Without it, vehicles cannot move, ships cannot function, aircraft cannot fly. In 1941, America produces approximately 8,000 tons of synthetic rubber. By 1944, that number reaches 762,000 tons, entirely replacing the natural rubber that is no longer available. Producing weapons is only half the challenge. Getting them to the battlefield requires a logistics network of staggering complexity. The Army creates the Transportation Corps in July of 1942. Its mission: move everything. Over the next 3 years, it will transport 7 million soldiers, 127 million tons of supplies, and 7 million tons of vehicles and equipment. The scale of this undertaking defies easy comprehension. Liberty ships and tankers carry the bulk of cargo across the Atlantic and Pacific. But in 1942, those ships are being sunk faster than they can be replaced. The solution comes through a combination of technology, tactics, and production. Convoys grow larger and better protected. Escort carriers provide air cover far from land. Long-range patrol aircraft, like the B-24 and the consolidated PBY Catalina flying boat, hunt U-boats relentlessly. Improved sonar and depth charges make submarine attacks increasingly dangerous for the attackers. And most importantly, the ships keep coming. For every vessel the U-boats sink, 2 more emerge from American shipyards. The turning point arrives in May of 1943. That month, German U-boats sink 57 ships, but lose 43 submarines in return. The exchange rate has reversed. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's submarine fleet, withdraws his U-boats from the North Atlantic. The Battle of the Atlantic is effectively over. The convoy routes are secure, and the floodgates open. The supplies that flow across these secured sea lanes are almost beyond imagination. In preparation for D-Day alone, more than 7 million tons of supplies accumulate in Britain. 5,000 tanks, 12,000 aircraft, 3 million tons of ammunition, 14 million tons of gasoline, 144,000 vehicles. All of it must be tracked, stored, maintained, and distributed. The organizational challenge equals the production challenge. On June 6, 1944, when 156,000 American, British, and Canadian troops storm the beaches of Normandy, they are backed by the greatest armada ever assembled. Nearly 7,000 ships and 13,000 aircraft. Every rifle, every bullet, every ration, every bandage, every gallon of fuel has traveled thousands of miles to be there. And the supply line doesn't end at the beach. It extends forward as the armies advance, requiring constant replenishment. By August of 1944, American forces are consuming 800,000 gallons of gasoline per day in France alone. The Red Ball Express, a convoy system operated primarily by African-American truck drivers, delivers 12,000 tons of supplies daily to forward units, often driving 20-hour shifts over roads torn apart by tank tracks and shell fire. The impact of American industrial power becomes unmistakable in every theater of the war. In the Pacific, the island-hopping campaign relies entirely on the ability to project overwhelming force across vast oceanic distances. The assault on Saipan in June of 1944 involves 700 ships, 2,000 aircraft, and 71,000 troops. Every element of this force exists because of American industrial capacity. The LSTS, landing ship tank, that carry vehicles and supplies directly onto hostile beaches, didn't exist in 1941. By 1944, over 1,000 have been built. The Japanese High Command, viewing intelligence reports about American production figures, initially refuses to believe them. They are convinced that the numbers are propaganda, deliberately inflated to damage Japanese morale. When Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, reviews actual production data, he understands the truth. I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. He is correct. By mid-1944, American industrial output exceeds that of Germany, Japan, and Italy combined. The United States is producing 40% of the world's weapons while maintaining living standards higher than any combatant nation. Higher, in fact, than most American citizens experienced during the Depression. In the skies over Germany, the strategic bombing campaign demonstrates American productive capacity in its most terrible form. The 8th Air Force begins operations in August of 1942 with 38 aircraft. By D-Day, it fields over 2,000 heavy bombers and 1,000 fighters. On a single day, March 2, 1944, American aircraft drop 3,000 tons of bombs on Berlin. The cost is staggering. The 8th Air Force suffers a 26% casualty rate, higher than the Marine Corps in the Pacific. Bomber crews face a statistical certainty of being killed or captured before completing their required 25 missions. But for every aircraft shot down, 2 more emerge from American factories. The Luftwaffe, despite producing technologically superior jet fighters late in the war, cannot overcome the simple mathematics of attrition. German pilots run out of fuel, run out of ammunition, run out of aircraft. American bombers keep coming. By early 1945, German industry is collapsing. Oil production falls to a trickle as refineries are destroyed. Tank production ceases. Ball-bearing factories, critical for virtually all military equipment, are obliterated. Ball-bearing factories, critical for virtually all military equipment, are obliterated. The vaunted Wehrmacht, which conquered most of Europe, grinds to a halt not through lack of fighting spirit, but through lack of supply. German soldiers fight with courage and skill, but they fight with dwindling ammunition, with vehicles that cannot move for lack of fuel, with equipment that cannot be replaced. The war ends in Europe on May 8, 1945. In the Pacific, it concludes on August 15th, following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The final cost, 60 million dead worldwide, cities reduced to rubble, entire nations devastated. But the industrial scoreboard tells its own story, a story of American productive capacity that, once unleashed, proved unstoppable. Final production figures defy comprehension. 296,429 aircraft of all types, 86,333 tanks, 12,579 ships, 640,000 trucks, 2,600,000 machine guns, 41 billion rounds of ammunition, 434 million tons of steel, $29 billion worth of ordnance. These numbers represent more than statistics. They represent the rifle that saved a soldier's life on Iwo Jima, the bomber that disrupted German oil production, shortening the war by months, the Liberty ship that delivered food to a starving population, the tank that liberated a concentration camp, the penicillin that prevented a wound from becoming fatal. The transformation of American industry accomplished what military brilliance alone could not. German generals were among the finest in history. Japanese soldiers fought with fanatical dedication, but no amount of tactical skill could overcome the fundamental arithmetic. America could build faster than the Axis could destroy. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe, will later write, "The catalog of materiel produced by the United States for the prosecution of the war is staggering. It is an achievement that has never been paralleled." His Soviet counterpart, Joseph Stalin, puts it more bluntly during the Tehran Conference. "Without American production, the United Nations could never have won the war." The industrial mobilization of World War II creates a template for American power that extends far beyond military victory. The factories built for war production become the foundation for post-war prosperity. The technologies developed under pressure, radar, jet engines, nuclear power, computers, reshape the modern world. The workforce that proved its capability during wartime refuses to return to pre-war limitations, setting in motion social changes that will redefine American society. The women who built bombers demand equal opportunity in peacetime. The African Americans who served in war plants and in uniform accelerate the civil rights movement. The industrial capacity that won the war becomes the economic engine of the American century. But perhaps most importantly, the home front miracle demonstrates something fundamental about democratic societies. When threatened, when united in purpose, when organized and led effectively, free people can accomplish what seems impossible. In December of 1941, America was unprepared, outgunned, and facing enemies who controlled most of the world. 4 years later, those enemies were utterly defeated, not primarily through superior generalship or better training, but through the simple, inexorable power of American industrial production. The factories are quiet now, many of them converted back to civilian use or standing empty, monuments to a time when an entire nation bent every effort toward a single goal. But their legacy remains. The lesson that democracy, when challenged, possesses depths of strength that tyranny cannot match. The home front workers, the riveters and welders, the crane operators and assembly line workers, the engineers and managers never fired a shot in anger. But they won the war as surely as any soldier. They are the unsung army, the arsenal of democracy, the force that turned the tide when victory seemed impossible. Their achievement stands as testament to what Americans can accomplish when the cause is just, the need is clear, and the commitment is absolute.